Okay, so at Omni Business Networking, we encourage you to talk about your business. When you go to most other networking organizations, what they say is, don't talk about your business, let's get to know you. Well, I think that's a byproduct to go networking on a regular basis. What I'd like to know is when you get this opportunity to speak to everybody is tell us about your business, prove your worth, and tell us the type of people that you're looking to connect with. Because now we're all starting to sit in traffic. I'd like to spend that time thinking how I can help you. If you want to talk about butterflies, well, we know, as you know, a shed load about butterflies. What we don't know is what you do, how you do it, and the type of connections you're looking to make. And building that trust is absolutely vital in terms of getting success through networking. So today we've got Peter Smith, and Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks, John. Okay, I'm going to say a little bit about me, so you can ignore that bit if you want. I'm also going to tell you a story, and that's just really for you to have a think about. And then I shall give you 7 steps for success. If you want to be successful in your business, then for these 7 steps, I know they work because I've actually used them myself in the past. The other thing is, if we have time, there are 10 traits of successful entrepreneurs. Whether we may not have time for that, but I'll give it John to put as a PDF if we don't have time for that. So without any more ado, so a little bit about me. I left school at 16. Spent 32 years in BT. Realised I was an apprentice and became a technician. Realised as a technician that technicians don't actually get paid as much as managers, so I decided to be a manager. And at each level, I realised that actually the boss gets paid more than I do. So I gradually worked up until I became a senior manager. And then I decided to take early retirement. And so I went on to do international consultancy, project management, and so on. And I worked all over the world, which was wonderful for me because I'm a big believer in doing things that you enjoy and getting paid for it. And I wanted to travel the world and get somebody else to pay for it. So that worked out quite well. And then I ran a business in Sumatra, an SME business, my first SME business, trading palm oil, before I realized the downside of palm oil. I did actually visit many cleared forests and things that were full of palm oil trees, and so I had a first-hand example of that. Came back to UK and decided that I could use those skills that I'd learned from the nearly 40 years as a manager to help SMEs. And then I started on a very long learning curve because working with SMEs is not the same as working with large corporates. It's true I had been an SME insofar as I'd run my own business, but the way that business owners, SME business owners think is different to the way that large corporates work. So I spent the first 2 or 3 years actually working more or less in a voluntary capacity, first with Nottingham Business Venture, and we had lots of training to help us understand the difference between mentoring and business advice and coaching. I also worked with a number of other outfits, including the Prince's Trust, helping business owners to start up. So I've probably worked with well over 150 SME business owners. So I've met the good, the bad, and the indifferent over that period of time, and helped them in all sorts of different ways. When my dear wife suggested we move down to Bracknell, which from a financial point of view was a challenge because you'd appreciate the cost of the price of housing in Bracknell is probably double the price of houses where we were in Derbyshire. But nevertheless, we'd started with grandchildren, so it was essential that we moved down to be nearer the grandchildren. And that's when we got 1. We've now got 7. So plenty to keep me busy there, although I've not seen the 2 in California for a couple of years now. So we're looking forward to getting across there as soon as possible. And I now work with SME business owners to help them to enjoy the businesses more. But I just want to tell you a short story. Some of you will have heard this, and I apologize if this is a repeat for you. but it'll give you something to think about. And it's about two travellers. A traveller was walking along a road and he came across a labourer and asked the labourer, what are the people like in the next town? To which he replied, well, what were they like in the last town? And he said, oh, they were awful. They hated me. They tried to cheat me. They disliked me. I was just glad to get out of that awful town. And the labourer said, well, that's a pity. You'll find the next city just as bad. And he continued on his labours. The second traveller was walking on the road and he asked the same question. What's the people like in the next town? And the labourer replied again, well, what were they like in the last town? And he said, they were fantastic. They loved me. They went out of the way to help me. I was sad to leave that wonderful town. And the labourer replied, well, that's excellent. You'll find the next city just as good. And he continued his labours. So what do we learn from that? I'm just pausing here to give you some, let you think about it. But if you'd like to take yourselves off mute, I will be asking some questions later, although I'll probably shut you up to at some stage to move on. So life isn't about other people, it's about us. If we believe the answer to our problems is somewhat out there, then we're going to be struggling to find the solutions. Once we realize that we need to look at ourselves first and to adapt to the world, then and look inwards rather than outwards, then we'll find life is a lot easier. And last of all, why do we always try and change other people? Why do we think that other people need to change in a way that we feel that they should? This happens with partners all the time, isn't it? Husbands, wives, wives, husbands. You're always wanting them to change, and you won't change them unless they want to change. So it has to come from inside. And I've mentioned this before, we're not enjoying it, we're not doing it right, we're doing it wrong if we're not enjoying it. But one of the questions we need to ask before we decide whether we're going to be successful is, what do we actually mean by business success? Has anybody got any thoughts about what success means to them? You can unmute yourselves and say.
I think it's not having to worry about going shopping and not going overdrawn in the bank account.
I'll move on and I'll put some suggestions up, because I'm sure some of you will think about it. Making lots of money, that's one way. Being financially independent, that'd be great. Being your own boss. Some people strive to be their own boss. I strived when I was being promoted to try and get to a level where I was telling everybody else what to do instead of other people telling me what to do. And the truth of the matter is, you never reach that stage in actual fact. Being other people's boss. Building an empire. Great to have an empire, but it's not for everybody. Feeling important. Do you need to feel important? Most people need to feel important to some degree. Having choices, isn't that what life's all about? You know, if we can choose what to do, that's really invaluable, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're responsible for our own success, and that's what running a business is about. If you run it yourself, you're responsible for your own success. You can't blame anybody else. So I don't need to go through the same list again, because basically when we've achieved our vision, we'll have achieved all those various things, or one of them, or whichever one's important, or selection of items that are important. So I want to now give you 7 steps to success. And I know this works because I've actually done it throughout my career. First of all, you need to know what you want to do. What does your vision actually look like? And Stephen Covey, some of you will have read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Start with the end in mind. If you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead there, and you don't know what you're going to end up with. But I'm a big believer in us deciding where we want to be rather than letting the world decide where we're going to be. You may be an optimist and think, well, I'll leave it to the world, but There we are. So, having decided where you want to be, then it's necessary to list all the things that you need to do, the steps on the way, if you like, in order to achieve that success. Now, if it's an ambitious enough vision, then there will be something which will be impossible. It just won't be possible. You can't see how you could possibly do it. But don't let that put you off. What you need to do is shove that to the end and say, well, I'll worry about that when the impossible becomes possible. And it always does, as long as you work your way down the list and you go through the easy bits first and you start to build some success on the road to achieving your vision. So you need a list. Then you need to order the list with the easiest first and the impossible one at the end. And then start working down the list. Knock off the easy ones one at a time. And this is important because we will always find on our way to that vision that there will be people who will say, oh, told you wouldn't be able to manage that. It's too difficult. It's not your cup of tea. It's not the sort of, you prefer to do this, you prefer to do that. Just ignore them. If the vision is powerful enough, you will thank them for their input and carry on regardless. And that's the bit that's important. You need to keep going. And finally, don't stop until you achieve your vision. So there we are, John. Seven very simple steps to success. It's not complicated. One of the things I've found when I've worked with business owners is they're good at the complicated stuff. It's the simple stuff they get wrong. So if we concentrate on the easy bits, then we've got the answer. Now, how are we for time, John?
We'll close the screen off and stop recording for questions if you're ready for that. But if not, we've got probably another 4 or 5 minutes, mate.
Okay. Well, I'll just, what I'll do is I won't go over this. I'll just list them and then I'll let you have that list later and then I'll go to questions. Okay. So I mentioned about the vision. Successful entrepreneurs have a vision. They also plan. They're also constantly learning. As a colleague of mine once said, when we stop learning, we stop earning. Innovation, constant innovation. The world's changing, technology is changing, society is changing. If we don't learn to evolve, we'll die. Do the work, make the effort, be brave. Sometimes we have to take a risk. Running a business is simple but not easy, and sometimes we have to take a risk. We just remember, we can always replace money. Money we can get. What we cannot do is replace time. So use your time sparingly and valuably. Persistency, health. If you don't have good health, and if you're not sure about your health, have a word with Dave or many of the other people who know about health. If you haven't got a good health, then you will struggle in anything that you try and do. So spend some time keeping healthy, otherwise you'll have to spend time being ill. Worry can be useful. As a friend of mine once said, there are 2 kinds of worry, those you can do something about and those you can't. If you can do something about it, do it. If you can't, don't worry about it. That's it. Questions?
Thank you, Peter. If you could just drop the screen now.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so if you are watching this video on YouTube, please feel free to contact Peter. His details will be in the description box there. Feel free to connect with him. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable, and will offer some free advice to a point, and will help you get your business back on track if you're struggling. So thank you very much, Peter. I really appreciate that, mate. I'm going to stop recording now.